Bang.
Should make this thing not one. What if I told you that in this bag right here, I had a public menace, a plague of epidemic proportions, a malicious, obscene, and offensive activity? In the Journal for Cultural Research, Lombard says that this is how many people described graffiti back in the day. This was a time when graffiti was sweeping cities and they didn't know how to deal with it. This wasn't new, however, as many people see that graffiti dates back to old cave writings in caves by the first cavemen almost. This was stated by Simpanidi in the International Social Science Review. What do wall scribblings and cave writings have in common, though? Both are expressions of people's ideas, thoughts, and feelings that they think are important to them. The battle between contemporary graffiti and the law is a long battle of misunderstanding and conflict. I will talk with you today about graffiti's journey to the beautiful, vibrant art it is today and my experience with it. In a study about graffiti's portrayal in film, Ross talks about graffiti's first emergence from Philadelphia in the 1960s. While still small at the time, graffiti then made its way up to New York in the 1970s. It began on trains and in subway stations, and then moved above ground to the sides of buildings and alleyways. Many people connect graffiti with hip-hop, but they actually started independent of each other. Lombard, a writer from earlier, also talks about graffiti's development with hip-hop and laws relating to it. It wasn't until graffiti developed more that it took on connotations related to hip-hop and the resistance culture related with it. Graffiti and hip-hop rose in popularity through block parties and street jams that were adaptations of Jamaican outdoor dance parties. These parties consisted of MCing, disc jockeying, breakdancing, and graffitiing. Graffiti then began to proliferate in New York during 1971 through to 1974. At first, it was a competition of who could hit the most trains and get their art seen by the most people. Writers, or graffiti artists, eventually found access to train yards where trains were kept at night. This allowed writers to spend more time on their work and shifted the focus from hitting the most trains to who had the best style. The 1970s and 80s, this is one of the trains in New York during 1977 that has a lot of graffiti on it. And this is the inside of one of those trains where people would often try to just write as much as they could so people could see it. The 1970s and 80s were marked by anti-graffiti campaigns with varying success. Cities such as New York had zero tolerance for the criminal activity. They focused on the criminality of the act and said that it was not tolerable and was not an art form. This required them to put millions of dollars into anti-graffiti campaigns that involved heightened security for train yards and graffiti removal techniques. This is a funny picture where the graffiti artist, his art's being removed by this guy, and then he sees that and puts the guy on the wall after his art's removed. In the Journal of Visual Anthropology, Stewart talks about what these cities saw graffiti was. They saw it as the broken window theory, which compares graffiti to a broken window of a building. This basically compares graffiti to a broken window, and then since the window if the window is not fixed, then it invites more criminal activity and bad things in general. Areas such as the West Coast, however, found more success through programs such as legal aerosol and youth programs that didn't paint the act as such a heinous crime. Overall, the most common theme of graffiti is its emergence in face of conflict. What better way to voice your opinion than just to write it on the wall next to you? In the Wilson Quarterly, Mr. Gross talks about his recent teachings in Greece, where he saw how recent government conflicts led to an increase in graffiti activity. He reflects on how this was very similar to his experience in New York, where he witnessed the beginning of graffiti back in 1970. An example closer to home is of the Civil War. In the journal American 19th Century History, Reed talks about over 60 heritage graffiti sites where Union soldiers wrote all of their names and regiments on the walls in forms of graffiti. We've come a long way since New York's war on graffiti. Since the early 2000s, well-known artists have participated in painting of legal spaces and are often sponsored by well-known paint brands such as Molotow. One of the most important aspects of graffiti is a person's style. This includes all of their flow, the spacing between letters, the colors, the background, everything about their writing is something that you develop when you learn how to do graffiti. I would like to show you some of my own art and artists of those who have inspired me and helped me to develop my own style. This artist goes by the name Vapor, and he's the one that inspired my style and a lot of colors. I wish I could be this good, but what drew me to his art was the vibrant use of colors and the complexity of the lettering. It's pretty hard to see the lettering at times, especially with pieces like this, but I've outlined the lettering to help you see it. It says Gardner, so Gardner. If you can see it now, that's impressive, but I outlined it, so you can see it then and then after. It's a little more clear, but it's still kind of hard. And then this next one, this one's really hard to see, but it says G Young, Jiyoung. There's the lettering. It's a little hard to see, but it's impressive nonetheless. This was my first piece of graffiti. It looks like terrible. I hated it. I started in middle school. We had a section of music explorations, which was the class where if you're not in band or orchestra, you basically take this class. And we had a section on hip hop, so we did some graffiti, and I hated my first piece. So I wanted to continue doing it. The next pieces will be the ones that I've done. I'm going to use them to explain certain terms in graffiti. The first term being tag. This is basically an artist's signature. They use it on their pieces, or they'll sometimes just go around and put it on walls to let people know where they're from. This is my tag. I haven't done it in a long time, so it might be bad. This pen kind of sucks. Okay, they all suck. That's really hard to see, but
I think my red pen works better on the right side.
Where?
Or it might be in the bag.
Yeah, let's see it. But it says my name. But that's a tag. Fill is the next word. This is basically anything inside of the lettering. The purple, the different colors. I use inks to do the coloring, like the orange and the blue. They're basically like finger paint. You just put it on the canvas. This is outline. Outline can be anything surrounding the letters to make it pop. In this one I use bubblegum, like goop, to make it stand out. This one I use bubbles near the top, and then the black and red. Ooh. And then this one is just white lettering. I use that to ask someone to prom. And then for this one is drop. Drop is basically where the 3D effect of graffiti goes. That's what characterizes a lot of graffiti, is the effect of 3D-ness. On this one, I don't have any. This one, there's like a slight going to the right. And this one also just drops straight into the page. This next one isn't mine. It's Vapor's, but it's wild style graffiti. This style is characterized by the literal just wild style, the lettering and complexity. It makes it hard to understand and read, but I think it looks really cool. Characters are also used a lot in graffiti. This is one I did for Christmas. It's Jack, and they'll often have their own specialized characters throughout their lettering on like a mural. And then I'll just go through a piece progression real quick. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but okay. So it's outline, and then coloring, and then you spray paint the background and cover it with tape, and then you take it off, and that's the final product.